Welcome to the AdTechGod Pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Welcome back to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod, the podcast where we meet the people behind the charity. We are thrilled to introduce our guest, Jay Sears, a distinguished figure in the advertising technology industry. With an impressive background that includes pivotal roles at Rubicon Project, Contextweb, and the IAB, Jay's expertise is well recognized. However, today's conversation takes a different turn, focusing on a cause close to his heart. A few weeks ago, Jay reached out with the desire to share about Team Daya, a charity he's passionately involved with. After looking into what Team Daya stands for, I was compelled by the remarkable transition Jay has made from ad tech to philanthropy. Team Daya isn't a charity, it's a movement supported by influential figures like Nicolle Pangis, formerly of Ampersand, Lauren Rose from OpenWeb, and Jaryd Knutsen from TrustX, and many, many more. Just a disclosure that I'm not personally involved in this charity, but rather am having him here as a gesture of goodwill. Today, Jay is here to share his inspiring journey and the moments that led him to dedicate himself to this charitable work. I'm excited to learn about Jay and Team Daya today. Jay, welcome to the AdTechGod Pod.
ATG, thank you. And thanks for having Team Daya on the pod and being part of our mission, building change by funding primary school construction in impoverished places across the developing world.
You know, Jay, when you reached out, I have quite a few people who reach out every month from, PR agencies to individuals to, representatives of their company, but no one from a charity. And so when you had contacted me, I took a look and you had told me that there was a little bit of a time crunch, but looking at what you guys are doing, I figured, if there's anything I can do to help charitable causes, I'm always happy to help. So I'm really happy that you're here and that you asked.
Well, ATG, thanks. And Team Daya is something really special. I'm excited to talk to you about it. And it's gotten such broad-based support across the ad tech world. Let's dive in.
I know you've listened to my podcast before, but it always starts the same way. So we're going to start this one the same way. How did you get into this industry? How did you start in ad tech? And what brought you to this, to the moment today where you are?
Well, I like to tell people I've had the great fortune of being part of 2 successful IPOs, 1 successful M&A, and 1 business failure so spectacular it was the subject of a book. And all this started really when I first got on the internet very early in the early 90s. I can't tell you exactly why, but I just got big eyes about the whole thing. And I decided pretty quickly it was going to change how we communicated, how we advertised, how we marketed, how commerce worked. And I looked for anybody that knew anything about the internet. I was just rabid about it. And then I got my first full-time job in the internet business in 1995, working for Michael Wolff. Many people know from his being an author of Burn Rate, the book about the company that we ran together, and Fire and Fury, the book on Trump. And then really, it was off to the races after that. I mean, probably I know the most folks from my time at Rubicon Project, which was really 6 years, but I like to say 3 careers in one. There was a turnaround and a pre-IPO period. And then my last 2 years there where I kind of went on the circuit, including a lot of global travel, seeing customers and speaking to industry groups and getting Rubicon into different media types beyond digital.
So, your background is obviously impressive and being involved in 2 IPOs or an M&A and an IPO, and then also the flame out. I actually really want to hear about the failure too. But what made you pivot suddenly? So you've obviously been successful in your life. You maybe could have just retired and called it a day. But what made you get involved with Team Daya? What was it that attracted you the most?
Well, the Team Daya origin story has a couple different components. The way that it came about is I had a very similar conversation with many different executives over and over again across the ad tech ecosystem, which was talking about our good fortune, talking about how lucky each of us are to work in an industry that so many of us have helped build from the ground up. So, whatever analogy you want to use, greenfield, blue ocean, so many of these businesses just started with an idea, a basic plan, and kind of built from there. And we've been part of just a spectacular business transformation. But that said, over and over, people said, well, what is a legacy we can leave? A social impact legacy, a legacy that will make people's lives better. And we talked about what that might be. And long story short, we settled on this idea of raising funds and constructing these simple school classrooms in very remote parts of the developing world. So we should get into that.
Where do you guys currently, I guess, operate? Where are you developing and building these schools today?
We're just back from Nepal, where we built our very first school back in 2019. We went there to build a second school as well. So a group of 10 of us just came back from there. We operate in Nepal, in Malawi, in Senegal, in Nicaragua, and in Guatemala. And in all these places, we're going into very remote communities that either may not have a school. So you have a situation where children are having to walk sometimes an hour or more to get to a school, which means in many cases, parents may not send those children to school. Or there could be a dilapidated building or other structures as simple as when we were in Senegal, our school project was replacing two operating classrooms that were built out of sticks, straw, and cardboard.
That's incredible. How do you feel this has really driven you forward? Seeing the impoverished, seeing those that don't have what we have, I think we often take it for granted that we live such a good life. And whether that's, living with two roommates or whether that's owning a large home or having one car or 10 cars, I mean, I think we often disregard, that others don't have simple necessities in life, like a school for their children to attend. How has this played an impact on you as a person and making you look at the world differently?
Well, when we talk about Team Daya, we talk a lot about building change. The essence of that is this is much bigger than building a school because you're lifting up these communities out of poverty, out of illiteracy. So the impact is not just on the students, but it's on individual families because it frees up the parents to focus on work and economic opportunity when the kids are in school. And it brings economic development to these communities too. So, part of the goal you want to get over in these communities is start to be part of a journey where these communities can get most of these children through a primary education. So this is through 6th or 8th grade. And the impact you can have, it's a huge economic and community impact. And of course, in these communities, the school, just like it is in communities where you might live here in the US, is a center point in the community. So helping build that up and having the actual structure that will last a generation has just enormous impact.
Yeah, I could imagine that if you don't have the resources or even the resource of a school for your children to attend, that the impact on family income is very different, that the time restraints and ability to go work full time, like you had mentioned, could be very different. But generally, this is uplifting not only the family or the household, but really the economy of that town or village or community. So the impact is far and long.
Education is correlated with the decline in childhood marriage. The communities, before a project is planned, have to agree that there'll be equal access for boys and girls to the school. And, this is just not always the case in many places in the world. So this is just one other reason why we talk about, yes, it's building schools, but it's really about building change.
What do you feel for, the people listening today, if they're interested in getting involved? I mean, how can they get involved with this charity, whether it is, donations or time?
Well, first, I think what we want to do as Team Daya is have a hat tip to all the people that got us to where we are today. And there are so many people across the ad tech ecosystem. We have support from over 1,000 donors across the ad tech ecosystem. And these are CEOs, they're founders, they're executives. I can mention a few names, but Rajiv Goel, Stephen Master, Sean Regsecker, Terry Kawaja, Brian Barnum, Steve Royer, Will Margoloff, Richard Sheldon, Dave Moore, David Cole, Joe Zawadzki, Jonathan Belek, Michael Barrett. We've had amazing company support from the Trade Desk, Jeff Green. Jeff's got his family foundation involved now. Wide Orbit, Eric Mathewson, Datonics, Mike Benedict, U of Digital, Shiv Gupta. And like I said, over 1,000 donors. And then, of course, there are people like yourself that are giving us platforms to just talk about the work. And that's so important. We have advisors, people that have lent their expertise too. So none of this would have happened. And it's funny starting this because it's like being involved in any other startup. Is it going to work? How is it going to come together? What's the go-to-market strategy? Do we have product market fit? There are so many parallels in some of the things that we're talking about right now. Everybody can make a contribution to the success of Team Daya and our work around building these schools. Of course, people can donate funds, but people can also lend a voice. There are going to be a lot of CEOs and other executives listening to your podcast. Have us in to talk to your employees. Have us in to talk to your conference. This is what Terry does with Luma's DMS programming. They have us in to talk to the attendees. Lend your expertise. So as we keep building and scaling Team Daya and raising more funds and building more schools, we're looking for expertise in finance and fundraising and marketing. It's interesting. Recently, Mike Zeman, who many folks will know from his time in Netflix and Square, and now he's at Life 360. We sit with him every single month and talk about what should our marketing look like? How does that facilitate our recruiting and our fundraising? And so everybody can make a difference if they want to get involved. It could be an hour or it can be coming with us on a school build. And of course, that's the ultimate. There are about 25 folks. You mentioned Nicolle Pangis. We talked about Mike Benedict, our head of recruiting, Jaryd Knutsen, Jordan Mitchell, deeply involved. All these folks have gone with us, gone with Team Daya on a school groundbreaking. So when someone joins the team, they make a deeper commitment to raise funds towards school building. And then at their own individual expense, beyond the fundraising, they'll travel with us to Senegal or to Nepal or to one of these other places. And we're there to bear witness. Go to the community, and we're there for the first week to do the school groundbreaking and work alongside all the partners that are involved that bring these schools to fruition. And one of the decisions very early, based on feedback in our planning, was the idea that there will be people that, yes, they want to write a check, but they also want to bear witness. And then when you bring someone to see this, it's so powerful and so compelling to be part of this, that what happens? This individual is going to come back and they're going to tell this circle of friends that they have among ad tech and friends and family about the impact of this work. And what happens is that ends up operating like a flywheel.
I mean, there were two things that resonated a lot with me just listening to you speak. I think one is the sheer number of people and companies involved in this. I did not know that. I knew that there were people involved. Obviously, I looked at your website, but you've definitely named off some incredibly successful people and companies. And I think that's amazing to hear. And I think the second part was how even running a charity itself is like operating, a business or a startup. The marketing component, the social component, the finances, and making sure that everything is aligned as well as operationally prepared to build this school. I would have never really thought of it that way. So I thank you for sharing that and sharing, the connection of, being a startup and being a company, and then also being a charity with a good cause.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's just as exciting as running any other startup or company through its various stages. And it also happens to have this really nice, rewarding, social impact that's just fantastic to see.
When we talk about, I talk about ad tech usually to some degree on every podcast. There's really some hot topics happening in the industry, mostly around, transparency and accountability, but this really applies to charities as well. And so for the listeners there, what are you doing on your end to make sure that there is the transparency and accountability for Team Daya?
Yeah, ATG, that's a great question. And in fact, when we decided to do this very early on, is one of the feedbacks from people we were talking to was, hey, I send off this check. I'm not quite sure where it goes. Right. So back to our discussion a minute ago about bearing witness, that's related to this discussion. The other thing we talk about is 100% of the fundraising goes towards school building. Number one. Number two, team members, when they do travel to a school groundbreaking, they pay for all their own costs. And then we went through a very careful selection of our NGO partners, the folks we operate with on the ground in these various countries, and have a very clear understanding of the development model that's being used in this business. It's called a theory of change. So it's kind of what's the approach in this case to get the school constructed. And if you don't have a good model, you don't get scale and longevity in your project. And the short version is the development model is one where it's theirs. It's not ours, the school. It's a partnership. It's an all hands in model. So a school doesn't get constructed until Team Daya acts as the donor group. The community has multiple obligations, including equal access to boys and girls that we talked about a minute ago, contributing all the unskilled labor for the construction of the school, the land for the school. If they have local materials, they're expected to provide those. Local education and government authorities have obligations. And then our NGO partner Build On does the community selection in the project management, because it takes anywhere from 2 to 4 months to start and then finish and deliver a completed school.
How do you feel, Jay? How do you feel about how being a part of Team Daya, operating a charity, has changed your perspective on philanthropy? And can any of those learnings or perspective changes, apply to advertising in ad tech?
I think you need to make a difference, of course, but people need to see it. They need to understand it. And so, again, back to this idea of bearing witness. And much like you would talk about in any business setting is say what you're going to do it, then say what you did. And keep repeating this. Say what you're going to do it, and then say what you did. And all of this applies to what we do at Team Daya, but it applies to one's professional experience. And building change is hard, and you need to inspire other people around you if you're building change. And you just can't do it alone. It's a team sport. You've got to find a way to have a lot of joy and fun, along the way.
Incredible. How can people get in touch with you today? Is there a website or social media presence? How do you recommend they contact you and learn more?
The website is supportteamdaya.com. Support Team Daya. Daya is spelled Daya. We didn't talk about it, but Daya is the Nepalese word for kindness. You could reach out to me. You can reach out to our head of recruiting, Jaryd Knutsen, who's also an executive at TrustX. We have a great group of people involved with Team Daya. They all have shared values around building change in these remote communities. And it is a lot of fun. There's a lot of joy in what we do. And we have a big tent. And there are many, many ways people can get involved. So awesome. Thank you, ATG.
Of course. Thank you, Jay. And I thank you for reaching out and even thinking of me to do this. So I appreciate your trust and I appreciate you being here today.
Well, it's just terrific. And we'll have to get ATG out on a school build one day.
I actually would absolutely love that.
Okay. We will make it happen.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. All right. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod, a podcast for the people about the people that make ad tech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of ad tech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of ad tech innovation.